Months had passed since Liam, Emma, and Benjamin stepped through the gateway to face the Guardians. The alien world stretched out before them, vast and mysterious. But this time they weren't afraid. They had come not as conquerors or explorers, but as humble representatives of humanity, ready to prove their worth. The Guardians watched silently, their glowing forms shifting like smoke in the wind. "We're here to learn," Liam said, his voice steady despite the weight of the moment. "We know we made mistakes, big ones, but we also believe this technology can help us grow, if we use it wisely." Emma nodded, stepping forward. "We've seen what happens when power is misused. We don't want to repeat those mistakes. Please, teach us." The Guardians exchanged glances, or at least, that's what it seemed like. Their movements were fluid, almost hypnotic, making it hard to tell where one began and another ended. Finally, one of them spoke, its voice resonating in their minds. "Asterisk knowledge is a burden. Will you bear it, asterisk?" "Yes," Liam replied without hesitation. "We'll do whatever it takes." The Guardian tilted its head, studying him closely. Then it gestured toward the ruins behind them. The same ruins they had discovered during their first visit. "Asterisk begin there. The answers you seek are within asterisk." With that, the Guardians dissolved into mist, leaving Liam, Emma, and Benjamin alone. For hours, they explored the ruins, uncovering ancient texts and strange devices that pulsed with energy. Each discovery brought new understanding, not just about the quantum gateway, but about the civilizations that had come before them. Some had thrived, using the technology to explore the stars and build wonders beyond imagination. Others had fallen, undone by greed and hubris. It was a stark reminder of the path humanity now faced. Back on Earth, news of their success spread quickly. Governments and organizations around the world came together to form the Global Exploration Council, a coalition dedicated to overseeing the responsible use of the quantum gateway. Under Liam and Emma's guidance, the council established strict rules. No weaponization, no exploitation of alien worlds, and no reckless experimentation. Progress would be slow, but it would be safe. Emma recovered fully, her injuries fading into memory. She and Liam became global figures, celebrated not just for their scientific achievements, but for their determination to prioritize ethics over ambition. Together, they traveled frequently between Earth and the alien planet, sharing knowledge and fostering cooperation between humans and other intelligent species they encountered. Benjamin, too, found redemption. He threw himself into advocacy work, speaking to audiences worldwide about the importance of caution and humility. His warnings carried weight because he admitted his own past mistakes, earning him respect even from former critics. As years turned into decades, humanity entered a new era. Colonies sprang up on distant planets, powered by sustainable energy sources and guided by principles of peace and exploration. The quantum gateway became more than a tool. It became a symbol of unity, proof that even the impossible could be achieved when people worked together. One evening, Liam and Emma stood side by side, gazing through the shimmering portal at the stars beyond. "Do you think we did the right thing?" Emma asked quietly. Liam smiled, taking her hand in his. "I think we gave humanity a chance. That's all anyone can ask for." They didn't have all the answers, and they knew challenges still lay ahead. But as long as they kept learning, kept growing, they believed humanity could rise to meet them. The universe had called it impossible, but humans had made it real. And that, they realized, was just the beginning. Weeks passed, and Emma remained in a coma. The doctors said her injuries were severe but not life-threatening. At least, not immediately. Still, every day felt like an eternity to Liam. He visited her bedside daily, sitting quietly beside her and talking about the project, their discoveries, and even mundane things like the weather. Sometimes he read from old science fiction novels, hoping the stories might spark something in her subconscious. But no matter how much he hoped, She showed no signs of waking up. In the meantime, the world had changed. News of the quantum gateway spread rapidly, sparking both awe and fear. Governments debated its potential uses, corporations fought over patent rights, and activists demanded strict regulations to prevent misuse. Amid the chaos, Liam found himself thrust into the spotlight. Reporters hounded him for interviews, politicians sought his advice, and ordinary people looked to him as a symbol of humanity's boundless ambition. But none of it brought him comfort. All he wanted was for Emma to wake up. One evening, as Liam sat by Emma's bedside, Benjamin Hayes walked into the room. "How is she?" he asked softly, his voice tinged with concern. "The same," Liam replied without looking up. His tone was flat, drained of emotion. "What do you want, Benjamin?" "I came to check on her. And to talk to you," Benjamin said, pulling up a chair. "The council wants to move forward with the gateway. They're planning another activation test next month." Liam shook his head, his jaw tightening. "We can't rush this. Not after everything that's happened." "I agree," Benjamin said quickly. "But they're not going to wait forever. If we don't take control of this technology, someone else will. And they might not be as careful." Liam finally looked at him, his eyes sharp with anger. "Careful? Is that what you call almost destroying two worlds? You still don't get it, do you? This isn't just about science or progress. It's about responsibility." Benjamin leaned back, his expression thoughtful. "You're right. I didn't understand before, but I do now. That's why I'm here. To help you make sure this doesn't fall into the wrong hands." For a long moment, Liam studied Benjamin, searching for any sign of deceit. Finally, he sighed. "Fine. What do you suggest?" "We need to stabilize the gateway first," Benjamin said. "And we need to figure out how to communicate with the Guardians. If we can prove we're ready to handle this responsibly, maybe they'll let us proceed." Liam nodded reluctantly. Over the next few weeks, he and Benjamin worked tirelessly to repair and improve the gateway. Using data collected during their trip to the alien planet, they refined the equations and reinforced the structure. Progress was slow, but each step brought them closer to a safer version of the device. Then, one night, Liam received a call from the hospital. Emma had woken up. Racing to her room, he found her sitting upright, her eyes groggy but alert. Tears filled his eyes as he hugged her tightly. "You're okay," he whispered, his voice trembling. "I heard your voice," Emma murmured, smiling weakly. "Every day, I could hear you talking to me. It kept me hanging on." Over the following days, Emma regained her strength. Though her recovery was slow, she insisted on helping with the project. Together, she and Liam prepared for the next activation test, determined to prove that humanity could use the gateway wisely. On the day of the test, they stood side by side in front of the gateway, its surface glowing steadily. As they activated it, a shimmering portal appeared once more. But this time, instead of chaos, there was calm. Through the portal, they saw the alien landscape again, but also something new: the Guardians, watching silently. "We're ready," Liam said aloud, his voice steady. "We've learned our lesson." The Guardians' forms shifted, their glowing eyes locking onto him. After a long pause, one of them spoke directly into his mind. Prove it, asterisk. Taking a deep breath, Liam stepped through the portal, followed by Emma and Benjamin. They weren't running away. They were stepping forward, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. For the first time, Liam felt a glimmer of hope. Humanity wasn't perfect, but it was learning. And that, he realized, was enough. Liam stared at Benjamin Hayes, his mind racing. The man who had once called their work reckless and dangerous was now standing in front of them, claiming he wanted to help. It didn't make sense. "Why should we trust you?" Liam asked, his voice sharp with suspicion. Benjamin sighed, lowering his hands. "Because I've seen what's happening back on Earth," he said, his tone serious. "The panic, the protests. It's chaos. People are scared, and they're looking for someone to blame. If the gateway is destroyed, it won't just end your project. It'll crush humanity's hope for the future. Emma stepped forward, her arms crossed. You didn't seem too concerned about hope when you leaked our data to the media, she said coldly. I made a mistake, Benjamin admitted, meeting her gaze. I thought exposing your work would force you to slow down, to think about the risks. But instead, it turned into a witch hunt. Rachel Monroe wants to bury this whole thing to save her company, but destroying the gateway isn't the answer. Liam exchanged a glance with Emma. They both knew time was running out. If reinforcements arrived, they might not get another chance to use the gateway. Still, something about Benjamin's sudden change of heart felt off. If you're really here to help, Liam said slowly, prove it. What can you do? Benjamin nodded, pulling a small device from his pocket. This is a signal jammer, he explained. It'll block Rachel's team from tracking your location, at least for a while. That should give you enough time to stabilize the gateway and get home. Emma hesitated, glancing at Liam. We don't have much of a choice, she said quietly. If he's lying, we're no worse off than we were before. Reluctantly, Liam agreed. Benjamin set up the jammer near the entrance of the facility, its faint hum blending with the low whir of the gateway. Satisfied it was working, he turned back to them. There's one more thing, he said. The Guardians. They're watching you. Don't underestimate them. How do you know about the Guardians? Liam demanded, his eyes narrowing. I've been studying ancient texts for years, Benjamin replied. Stories of civilizations that tried to master space-time travel and paid the price. The ruins you found, they weren't just warnings. They were lessons. You need to be careful how you use this technology. Before either of them could respond, a distant roar echoed through the air. The ground trembled slightly, reminding them of the dangers lurking outside. We don't have time for this, Emma said urgently. We need to go, now. Benjamin stepped aside, gesturing toward the gateway. Then go, he said. But remember, knowledge always comes at a cost. With no time to waste, Liam and Emma approached the shimmering portal. Hand in hand, they took a deep breath and stepped through. For a moment, everything went white, a blinding flash of light and sound that left them disoriented. When they opened their eyes, they were standing in the Nevada desert, the familiar sight of the facility surrounding them. Relief washed over them as they realized they were home, but their joy was short-lived. As they stumbled out of the gateway, they saw paramedics rushing toward them. Behind them lay Emma, unconscious and badly injured. She had stayed behind to ensure the gateway remained stable during their return, sacrificing herself to make sure Liam got home safely. Liam dropped to his knees beside her, his heart breaking. Emma, he shouted, gripping her hand tightly. Her breathing was shallow, her face pale. Paramedics quickly loaded her onto a stretcher and rushed her to a nearby medical unit. Hours later, Liam sat alone in the control room, staring blankly at the damaged gateway. He had saved humanity's chance at exploring the stars, but at what cost? Emma's condition was critical, and doctors weren't sure if she would recover. As guilt weighed heavily on him, Liam vowed to honor her sacrifice by ensuring the gateway was used wisely. Whatever happened next, he knew one thing for certain. Humanity's journey into the unknown had only just begun. As the demolition team approached the facility, Liam and Emma scrambled to come up with a plan. They couldn't let the quantum gateway be destroyed, not when it was their only way back to Earth. But how could they stop people who were miles away and unaware of their presence? The communicator wasn't working, and shouting into the alien wilderness wouldn't do any good. Time was running out. We need to distract them, Emma said suddenly, her voice firm despite the fear in her eyes. If we can draw their attention somewhere else, maybe we can buy enough time to fix the gateway. Liam nodded, though his mind raced with doubts. But what kind of distraction will work against a team like that? They're armed and ready for anything. Emma glanced at the glowing symbols etched into the walls of the facility. What if we use the gateway itself? If we can get it to activate, even briefly, it might scare them off. It's damage, Liam reminded her. We don't even know if it'll turn on again. There's no harm in trying, Emma insisted. Her tone left no room for argument. Together, they rushed to the control room. The gateway loomed silently in the center of the space, its surface still cracked from the initial activation. Liam began typing furiously at the console, rerouting power and bypassing damaged circuits. Sparks flew as he forced the system to reboot, while Emma monitored the energy levels, calling out warnings whenever they spiked too high. Finally, after several tense minutes, the gateway flickered to life. A faint hum filled the room as light pulsed weakly at its core. It wasn't stable, but it was enough. Now what? Liam asked, wiping sweat from his forehead. Get outside, Emma replied. Make sure they see it. They hurried out of the facility just as the demolition team arrived. The workers stopped in their tracks, staring at the glowing ring with wide eyes. Some stepped back nervously, while others raised their weapons, unsure of what they were facing. The leader of the group, a burly man named Carl, shouted orders, but his voice wavered with uncertainty. What is that thing? One of the workers whispered, pointing at the gateway. It's not natural, another muttered. We should leave. Before anyone could act, the gateway emitted a loud crackle, sending arcs of energy shooting into the sky. The ground trembled slightly, and the air grew thick with static electricity. Panicked, the demolition team began retreating, abandoning their equipment and scrambling toward their vehicles. They're leaving, Emma exclaimed, relief washing over her face. For now, Liam added grimly. He knew this was only a temporary victory. Once the team reported back to Rachel, reinforcements would likely follow. They needed to repair the gateway, and fast. Back inside, they worked tirelessly to stabilize the device. Using spare parts scavenged from the ruins before they collapsed, they patched up the cracks and reinforced the wiring. Hours passed in a blur of sparks, tools, and muttered calculations. Exhaustion weighed heavily on them, but neither dared to stop. By nightfall, the gateway was operational again, or as close to operational as they could manage. Its surface shimmered faintly, casting an eerie glow across the room. This is it, Liam said, stepping back to admire their handiwork. One more test, and we'll know if it works. Emma hesitated, her expression troubled. What if it doesn't take us home? What if it sends us somewhere worse? Liam placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. We won't know until we try. Besides, staying here isn't an option either. Taking a deep breath, they activated the gateway once more. This time, the vortex appeared quickly, swirling with vibrant colors that seemed to stretch endlessly. Without hesitation, Liam grabbed a small tracking device and tossed it into the portal. Moments later, readings confirmed the device had landed somewhere on Earth. It worked. Emma breathed, tears welling up in her eyes. We can go home. But as they prepared to step through, a shadow moved near the entrance of the facility. Both froze, their hearts pounding. Slowly, the figure emerged. It was Benjamin Hayes. Somehow, he had tracked them down. You shouldn't have come here, Liam said sharply, stepping protectively in front of Emma. Benjamin held up his hands, looking unusually calm. I'm not here to stop you, he said. I came to help. Back on Earth, news of the quantum gateway experiment had leaked to the public. Benjamin Hayes, the skeptical astrophysicist who had opposed Liam and Emma's work from the start, had shared classified data with journalists. Headlines screamed about reckless scientists playing with forces they didn't understand. Social media erupted with debates, some calling Liam and Emma heroes, others labeling them dangerous fools. The backlash was swift and fierce. Rachel Monroe, who had funded the project, found herself under intense scrutiny. Her company's stock plummeted as investors panicked over the potential fallout. Protesters gathered outside her headquarters in San Francisco, holding signs that read, "Stop playing God," and "Save humanity, not destroy it." Faced with mounting pressure, Rachel made a decision she hoped would protect her business and her reputation. She ordered a team to travel to the Nevada facility and destroy the quantum gateway. Unaware of Rachel's betrayal, Liam and Emma continued their exploration of the alien ruins. They spent hours studying the machinery in the hidden chamber, trying to decipher its purpose. The glowing orb on the pedestal seemed central to everything. But every time they tried to interact with it, the symbols on the walls shifted unpredictably. It was as if the device was testing them, waiting for something. "We're missing something," Liam muttered, frustration creeping into his voice. He ran his hands through his hair, pacing back and forth. "There has to be a pattern we're not seeing." Emma sat cross-legged on the floor, poring over her notes. "Maybe it's not just about solving the puzzle," she said thoughtfully. "The Guardian said knowledge comes at a price. What if it's about proving we're ready to handle it?" Liam stopped pacing and looked at her. "You think this is some kind of test? Like they're watching us right now?" "It makes sense," Emma replied. "Why else would they leave us here instead of stopping us outright? They want to see what we'll do." Before they could discuss it further, the ground shook violently, knocking them off their feet. Dust rained down from the ceiling as the machinery in the chamber hummed louder than ever. Alarmed, they scrambled toward the exit, only to find their path blocked by a massive creature unlike anything they'd seen before. Its body was covered in thick, armored scales, and its eyes glowed with an unnatural light. It let out a deafening roar, shaking the entire structure. "Run!" Liam shouted, grabbing Emma's hand. They sprinted back toward the facility, the creature hot on their heels. Behind them, the ruins began to collapse, chunks of stone falling like rain. By the time they reached the safety of the building, the ruins were reduced to rubble, burying whatever secrets they might have held. Inside, they caught their breath, hearts pounding. But their relief was short-lived. As they turned on the monitors to check the external cameras, they saw a group of people approaching the facility. Rachel's demolition team. Armed with explosives and heavy equipment, they were clearly there to destroy the gateway. "Oh no," Emma whispered, her face pale. "They don't know where we are, or what they're doing." Liam clenched his fists, anger flashing in his eyes. "We can't let them ruin everything. Not after all we've been through." "But how do we stop them?" Emma asked desperately. "We're stuck here." Liam hesitated, then grabbed a communicator from the control panel. If they could contact Earth, maybe they could warn someone about the danger. But as he powered it up, static filled the screen. Whatever interference existed on this planet was stronger than anything they'd encountered before. "We need to figure this out fast," Liam said grimly. "Because if they destroy the gateway, we may never get home." "This must have been their control center," Liam whispered, awestruck. He reached out to touch the orb but stopped when Emma grabbed his arm. "Don't," she hissed. "We don't know what it does." Before they could decide what to do next, a voice echoed through the chamber, not in words, but in thoughts. It felt like someone speaking directly into their minds. "Asterisk dares disturb the Guardians," asterisk it demanded, cold and commanding. Liam froze, his heart pounding. "Did you hear that?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. Emma nodded, gripping his arm tightly. "Yes," she whispered. "What do we do?" Before they could respond, shadowy figures began to materialize around them. They were tall and humanoid, their forms shifting like smoke. Their eyes glowed with an intense light, pinning Liam and Emma in place. One of them stepped forward, its presence overwhelming. "You are not of this world," it said, its voice resonating in their heads. "Explain yourselves." Liam swallowed hard, trying to steady his nerves. We came here by accident," he stammered. "We were testing a device, a way to travel through space. We didn't mean to intrude." The figure studied them silently, its gaze piercing. Finally, it spoke again. You seek mastery over forces beyond your understanding. Many have tried and failed. Why should we allow you to continue? Emma stepped forward, her voice trembling but determined. Because we're trying to help our people, she said. Our world is dying. If we can learn to use this technology safely, we can save billions of lives. The Guardian tilted its head, considering her words. After a long pause, it raised a hand, and the chamber lit up with images, visions of planets destroyed, civilizations wiped out, all because of attempts to manipulate space-time. This is the cost of hubris, it said. Will you bear it? Liam and Emma exchanged a glance, realizing the weight of what they were doing. We'll try, Liam said quietly. But we need your help to understand. Please. The Guardian hesitated, then lowered its hand. Very well, it said. But beware. Knowledge comes at a price. With that, the figures dissolved into mist, leaving Liam and Emma alone in the chamber. As they stared at each other, the enormity of their situation sank in. They had found proof that others had mastered quantum singularity bridging, but also evidence of the risks. Now they had to decide whether to accept the challenge or turn back. The next morning, Liam and Emma decided to take a closer look at the ruins they had discovered. Armed with flashlights and tools, they stepped cautiously outside the facility. The alien world was eerily quiet, save for the occasional rustle of leaves or distant chirps of unseen creatures. The glowing symbols on the ruins seemed brighter in the daylight, pulsing faintly as if alive. Liam couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, but he pushed the thought aside. They needed answers, and these ruins might hold them. As they approached the structures, Emma noticed something unusual. Embedded in the stone were shards of what looked like glass, shimmering with colors that shifted depending on the angle. What do you think this is? She asked, brushing away dirt to reveal more of it. Liam examined the material closely. It's not natural, he said after a moment. This has to be some kind of technology. Maybe part of whatever system they use to control their version of the gateway. Emma nodded, her curiosity outweighing her fear for now. Together, they began carefully documenting the ruins, snapping photos and sketching the strange symbols into notebooks. Some of the carvings resembled patterns found in ancient Earth cultures, while others were completely alien. One recurring motif stood out, a spiral surrounded by jagged lines, almost like lightning bolts. I think this symbol means energy, Liam said, pointing to one of the carvings. And these ones here, maybe directions or warnings. Emma frowned, tracing her fingers over another set of markings. Warnings would make sense. Whoever built this place clearly knew how dangerous messing with space-time could be. Their exploration was interrupted by a low rumble beneath their feet. Startled, they exchanged worried glances before backing away from the ruins. The ground trembled slightly, and dust fell from cracks in the stones. Then, without warning, a section of the wall shifted, revealing a hidden passageway. Should we go in? Emma asked hesitantly, peering into the dark opening. Liam hesitated, his instincts torn between caution and curiosity. We don't have much of a choice, he said finally. If there's information in there about how to fix the gateway or get us home, we need to find it. With flashlights in hand, they ventured inside. The air grew cooler as they descended deeper into the passage. The walls were lined with more glowing symbols, casting an otherworldly light that danced across the floor. At the end of the tunnel, they found themselves in a large chamber filled with machinery unlike anything they'd ever seen. Strange consoles hummed softly, their surfaces etched with intricate designs. In the center of the room stood a pedestal topped with a crystal orb that pulsed rhythmically, as if breathing. Liam and Emma stood side by side, staring at the alien landscape that stretched out before them. The air smelled sweet, like flowers mixed with something metallic, and the ground beneath their feet felt soft, almost spongy. Strange birds with shimmering wings darted across the sky, their calls echoing in a language neither of them could understand. It was beautiful, but also terrifying. They were no longer on Earth. That much was clear. "Do you think the others are here too?" Emma asked, her voice trembling slightly. She glanced back at the facility, which now looked out of place against the vibrant backdrop of this new world. The building seemed intact, but there was no sign of movement inside. "I don't know," Liam replied, his brow furrowed as he tried to piece together what had happened. "The gateway must have pulled us through when it destabilized. But whether it brought everyone, or just us—" He trailed off, unable to finish the thought. Emma swallowed hard, trying to push down the fear bubbling in her chest. "We need to check," she said firmly. "If anyone else made it, they'll be inside." Together, they walked back toward the facility. As they stepped inside, the familiar hum of machinery greeted them, though much quieter than before. The lights flickered weakly, casting long shadows across the walls. They called out for their teammates, their voices echoing in the empty halls. No one answered. In the main control room, Liam found the computers still running, though most of the screens displayed error messages. One monitor, however, showed a live feed from an external camera mounted on the roof. The image confirmed what they already knew. The facility was no longer in the Nevada desert. Instead, it sat in the middle of an unfamiliar wilderness, filled with towering trees and glowing rock formations. "This can't be real," Emma muttered, sinking into a chair. Her hands trembled as she covered her face. "How are we supposed to get back? What if we're stuck here?" Liam knelt beside her, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We'll figure it out," he said, his tone calm but resolute. "We've come this far. We'll find a way." As they worked to assess the situation, Liam noticed something odd about the gateway itself. Its surface was cracked in several places, and faint sparks occasionally jumped from its edges. Whatever had happened during activation had damaged the device. Without repairs, it might never work again. But repairing it would require tools and materials they didn't have, and time they weren't sure they had. The next few hours passed in a blur as they explored the area around the facility. The planet, though they assumed it was a planet, was teeming with life. Streams of crystal-clear water wound through the grasslands, and clusters of bioluminescent plants lit up the forest floor. Despite the beauty, there were signs of danger everywhere. Tracks larger than any animal on Earth marred the soft soil, and distant roars hinted at predators lurking nearby. On their third trip outside, they discovered ruins half buried in the earth. The structures were ancient, their surfaces covered in strange symbols that glowed faintly in the dim light. Liam ran his fingers over the carvings, his mind racing. "This looks like some kind of writing," he said, excitement mixing with apprehension. "Maybe whoever built this place figured out how to use the gateway too." Emma frowned, studying the ruins. "Or maybe they destroyed themselves trying," she countered. Her voice carried a note of caution. "We should be careful, Liam. Just because we're here doesn't mean we belong here." Before they could examine the ruins further, a low growl echoed behind them. Spinning around, they saw a pair of glowing eyes watching from the edge of the forest. Whatever it was big, and it wasn't friendly. Heart pounding, Liam grabbed Emma's arm and pulled her back toward the facility. They didn't stop running until they were safely inside, locking the heavy doors behind them. Breathing heavily, Emma leaned against the wall. "What was that?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know," Liam admitted, peering through a window. The creature had vanished into the trees, leaving only claw marks on the ground outside. "But I think we just found our first problem." As night fell, the temperature dropped sharply, and the glowing plants cast eerie shadows across the facility. Exhausted but unable to sleep, Liam and Emma huddled together in the control room, trying to make sense of everything that had happened. They had achieved the impossible. They had traveled to another world. But now, stranded and surrounded by unknown dangers, they realized their journey was far from over. The day of the first activation arrived, and the air in the Nevada facility buzzed with a mix of excitement and tension. Everyone on the team moved quickly, checking equipment, running final diagnostics, and making sure everything was ready. The quantum gateway loomed in the center of the room, its massive ring structure gleaming under bright lights. Wires snaked across the floor, connecting it to banks of computers and power generators. It looked like something out of a dream or a nightmare. Liam stood at the control panel, his hands hovering over the buttons. He had spent countless nights imagining this moment. But now that it was here, he felt a strange sense of unease. Emma stood beside him, her eyes fixed on the gateway. She tried to stay calm, but her heart raced as she watched the energy levels climb higher and higher. This was it, the culmination of years of hard work, sacrifice, and hope. "Ready?" Liam asked, glancing at Emma. His voice was steady, but there was a flicker of doubt in his eyes. "As ready as I'll ever be," she replied, forcing a smile. She reached out and squeezed his arm, trying to reassure him and herself. With a deep breath, Liam pressed the activation button. For a moment, nothing happened. The room fell silent, the hum of machinery fading into an eerie stillness. Then, slowly, the gateway began to glow. A faint light appeared at its center, pulsing gently like a heartbeat. The light grew brighter, swirling faster until it became a shimmering vortex of colors. Blues, purples, and golds spinning together in a mesmerizing dance. "It's working," someone shouted from the back of the room. Cheers erupted as the team clapped and hugged each other, overwhelmed by what they were witnessing. Even Liam allowed himself a small smile, though his focus never left the controls. But just as the celebration reached its peak, something went wrong. The vortex began to wobble, its once smooth motion turning erratic. Sparks flew from the control panel, and alarms blared throughout the facility. "Shut it down," Emma yelled, panic rising in her voice. But before Liam could react, the gateway emitted a deafening roar. A shockwave rippled outward, knocking everyone off their feet. Lights flickered, and the room plunged into darkness. When Liam opened his eyes, he found himself lying on the cold floor, disoriented and gasping for air. His ears rang, and his head throbbed, but he forced himself to sit up. Around him, the rest of the team groaned as they struggled to recover. The gateway was silent now, its glow extinguished. At first glance, it seemed like the experiment had failed completely. Then Liam noticed something strange. Through the open doors of the facility, he saw a sky unlike anything he'd ever seen before. Instead of the familiar blue, it was a deep shade of purple streaked with orange clouds. And instead of the dry desert landscape surrounding the facility, there was lush green grass dotted with towering trees. Confused, Liam stumbled outside, his mind racing. Where was he? Had the shockwave somehow transported him somewhere else? Before he could process what he was seeing, Emma appeared beside him, her face pale with shock. What is this place?" she whispered, clutching his arm tightly. Liam didn't answer right away. He scanned the horizon, taking in the alien scenery. In the distance, he spotted strange rock formations glowing faintly, as if lit from within. Birds, or something like them, with iridescent feathers flitted through the air. It was beautiful, surreal, and utterly impossible. "We did it," Liam said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "We actually did it." Emma stared at him, her expression a mix of awe and fear. "But where are we?" Liam shook his head, unable to explain. All he knew was that the quantum gateway had worked, but not in the way they had expected. Instead of creating a stable portal, it seemed to have sent him, and possibly the entire facility, to another world entirely. As the reality of their situation sank in, Liam felt a surge of both wonder and dread. They had achieved the impossible, but now they faced a new set of challenges. What kind of place had they landed in? And more importantly, how would they get back home? After the rejection from the Global Science Council, Liam and Emma returned to their lab feeling both defeated and determined. They knew they couldn't give up, not when they were so close to something that could change everything. But without funding or official support, moving forward would be harder than ever. The equipment they needed was expensive, and the calculations required for the next phase of their work were beyond what their small computers could handle. Still, they refused to let doubt creep in. If anything, the Council's skepticism only fueled their resolve. Emma spent hours researching ways to keep the project alive. She reached out to old colleagues, scoured online forums for unused lab space, and even considered crowdfunding. One night, while scrolling through a list of tech investors, she stumbled upon Rachel Monroe's name. Rachel was a billionaire entrepreneur known for taking risks on unconventional ideas. Her company, Monroe Innovations, had funded everything from underwater cities to AI-driven healthcare systems. Emma hesitated before sending an email. What were the chances someone like Rachel would care about their wild theory? But she decided it was worth a shot. To her surprise, Rachel replied within hours. "Tell me more," the message read. Encouraged, Emma drafted a detailed proposal and sent it off. A week later, Rachel invited them to meet at her headquarters in San Francisco. Nervous but hopeful, Liam and Emma flew across the country to make their pitch. When they arrived, they found themselves in a sleek, glass-walled office overlooking the city skyline. Rachel greeted them warmly, her sharp eyes scanning their presentation materials with obvious interest. "So, you're telling me you figured out how to fold space-time?" Rachel asked after they finished explaining their work. Her tone was skeptical but curious. "We believe we have," Liam replied, his voice steady despite his nerves. "We just need the resources to build a prototype." Rachel leaned back in her chair, tapping her pen against the table. "This is either the most brilliant idea I've ever heard, or the craziest. Either way, I'm in." She smiled, and for the first time in weeks, Liam and Emma felt a glimmer of hope. With Rachel's backing, they secured a remote facility in the Nevada desert to continue their experiments. The location was perfect, isolated, secure, and far away from prying eyes. Over the next few months, they worked tirelessly alongside a small team of engineers and technicians handpicked by Rachel. Progress was slow but steady. Every breakthrough brought them closer to building the Quantum Gateway, a massive ring-shaped device designed to manipulate space-time. But as the project moved forward, cracks began to form in their partnership. Liam grew increasingly obsessed, spending long nights alone in the lab tweaking equations and running simulations. He started skipping meals and ignoring calls from friends and family. Emma noticed the change and tried to pull him back, reminding him that they were a team. "We can't do this alone, Liam," she said one evening, finding him hunched over his desk. "You're pushing yourself too hard." "I don't have a choice," Liam snapped, his voice sharp with frustration. "If we mess this up, it's over. Do you understand that?" Emma sighed, hurt but unwilling to argue. She understood his passion, but she also worried about the cost. The more they learned about quantum singularity bridging, the clearer it became that tampering with such forces carried enormous risks. What if they accidentally created a black hole? Or worse, tore a hole in reality itself? These questions haunted her, though she kept them to herself for fear of slowing down the project. Tensions weren't limited to the team. Rumors of sabotage began spreading among the workers. Tools went missing, equipment malfunctioned, and strange messages appeared on computer screens late at night. At first, Liam dismissed it as paranoia. But Emma wasn't so sure. "Someone doesn't want us to succeed," she warned him. "We need to be careful." Despite the challenges, they pressed on. For every setback, there was a new discovery to keep them motivated. By the end of the year, the Quantum Gateway stood ready for its first test. It was a towering structure made of steel and glowing circuits, humming with energy. As they prepared for activation, Liam couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and dread. They were about to attempt something no one had ever done before, and failure wasn't an option. In the year 2147, humanity had reached a point where it seemed like there was nothing left to discover. Scientists had mapped the human genome, built machines that could think like people, and even started colonies on Mars. But one mystery still lingered, a puzzle so complex that most scientists didn't even bother trying to solve it anymore. It was called quantum singularity bridging, a theory about folding space-time to allow instant travel across galaxies. For centuries, experts dismissed it as impossible. The math always led to dead ends, and the idea of tearing holes in the fabric of reality sounded more like science fiction than science fact. But deep in a quiet corner of New York City, Liam Carter wasn't ready to give up. He was a physicist who spent his days surrounded by chalkboards covered in equations and computer screens glowing with simulations. His office was cluttered with papers, coffee cups, and half-eaten sandwiches. Some said he was obsessive, but Liam didn't care. To him, solving this problem wasn't just about proving others wrong. It was about survival. Earth's resources were running out faster than anyone wanted to admit, and humanity needed a way to explore new worlds if it hoped to keep going. Liam wasn't working alone. His closest friend and colleague, Emma Lewis, shared his passion for the project. While Liam focused on the theoretical side, Emma handled the practical challenges. She was calm where Liam was intense, thoughtful where he was impulsive. Together, they made a great team. Late one night, while reviewing data from an old experiment, Emma noticed something strange. A tiny fluctuation in the numbers suggested that under very specific conditions, the equations might not collapse after all. It wasn't much, but it was enough to spark hope. "Liam, look at this," Emma said, pointing to her screen. Her voice was steady, but her eyes betrayed her excitement. Liam leaned over, squinting at the data. At first, he thought it was a mistake, but the more he studied it, the clearer it became. This wasn't random noise, it was a pattern. For hours, they worked together, running simulations and tweaking variables. By morning, they had something groundbreaking, a possible solution to the quantum singularity equation. The next step was sharing their discovery with the world. They prepared a presentation for the Global Science Council, the governing body overseeing all major scientific projects. When the day came, Liam stood nervously in front of a room filled with skeptical faces. Most of the council members weren't physicists. They were politicians, business leaders, and bureaucrats. Still, Liam tried his best to explain their findings in simple terms. "This isn't just a theory anymore," he said, gesturing to a holographic model of the equation behind him. "We found a way to stabilize the process. If we can build a device based on these principles, we'll be able to travel anywhere in the universe instantly." His words were met with silence. Then Benjamin Hayes, a well-known astrophysicist, spoke up. "You're talking about tearing apart the very structure of reality," he said, shaking his head. "Do you have any idea what kind of risks you're taking? This isn't science, it's madness." The room erupted into murmurs of agreement. Liam felt his cheeks grow hot, but Emma stepped forward, her voice calm and clear. "Every great leap forward has been called reckless at first," she said. "Yes, there are risks. But staying here, doing nothing while our planet falls apart, that's the real danger." Despite their efforts, the council refused to fund the project. Disappointed but undeterred, Liam and Emma decided to continue their work in secret. They knew the road ahead would be difficult, but they also knew one thing for certain. If anyone was going to make the impossible possible, it would be them.